Hey folks, MasakoX here. You might think that we are being kinda juvenile with this kind of discussion, but it really does have some weight behind it. Within the Dragon Ball fandom, the sphere, it just won't go away and rot in the corner or something. We can't move on from it. Thanks to the likes of the early dub, early fan assumptions, and, you know, Toriyama not being particularly considerate with his legacy characters most of the time, that we are having to make or even acknowledge these types of debates on the internet. It's a fact of life here. You see, it's often said that Krillin is considered to be the most laughed at character in the franchise. I will openly admit that the DBZA crew did not help that preconception, but they did go on later to rectify that. But between all of the Krillin-owned counts and counting the number of deaths he's had, which is 2 by the way, the same amount that Goku and Vegeta have received by the way, plus the one when Buu erased practically everyone on the planet save for those 2 in Hercule, but you can't really blame Krillin for that. When you step back and think for a second, really? There are plenty of W's for the Krill Dog to have had, but you cannot simply ignore or pretend that it didn't happen. And if you want to really dig deep, without Krillin, Dragon Ball probably might have been cancelled, since the first manga arc of the series did not set the world alight. It's often forgotten. Goku was quite bland and was carried by the rest of the cast. Krillin and the 21st Budokai, their addition, kickstarted the world of Dragon Ball that we know today. Then you have to accept that he is one of the most functional and stable families going in the franchise. He is still in the story, even as a support character, and still manages to do something cool on occasion, most notably in the superhero movie. And overall, he's generally liked by the characters. He has managed to be a long-lasting and loyal friend of the Son family for 3 generations now. And that's no mean feat, becoming a very close pal for both Goku and Gohan. But this discussion is not about Krillin. This is about one of those original characters that helped carry Goku's relatively absent personality of the first saga. And sure, Krillin gets thrown around a lot, but there is one character within the main Dragon Team cast who has it much worse, and has been delegated into meme status, and not the good kind of memes. It was in fact the inspiration for our April Fool What If, where this chap got to destroy the universe out of frustration towards this fact. You know who we're talking about. I mean, we put his name in the thumbnail and the title of the video. Of course you know. We are talking about the scar-faced bandit, Yamcha. And while there were attempts recently to try and connect this pose with a triumph in the baseball episode, which has gone down as one of the more memorable Super episodes. You know your series has produced a corker of an episode when people refer to a specific trope within it as that episode. But Yamcha still hasn't recovered from years of being this franchise's punching bag. Most of the jokes of the series revolve around him, and sometimes even the actual show chooses to play upon the meta humor for a quick gag or to get some attention on it when things are looking a little bit stale. Just poke fun at Yamcha and you're good. Do characters really deserve this kind of treatment from the showrunners these days? Or is this simply the vestigial tale of a bygone age, where the showrunners didn't care about that sort of thing, the audience's feelings about a character, they just wanted to do it for the sake of a joke? It's up for discussion, certainly. But how did this happen? How do we get to this position where this cool bandit became the whipping boy of the fandom? Well, it's sort of been around for all of it, bar the first battle with Goku. This feeling that he was more of a gag character than a real character. There's Tenshinhan, the most serious one, and then there is Yamcha, who isn't. Yamcha's biggest problem, the one that's been around since the very beginning of the series, was that he was often the butt of the joke. Yes, he was a pretty badass desert bandit who clearly was pretty successful at his job and almost defeated Goku, albeit that guy being hungry, but hey, that's on him. But his crippling fear of girls kept him from his triumph. A joke about being nervous of women. Low blow. And even though he's a bit of a morally grey character to begin with, he was often fixated on money and his own interests initially with the Dragon Balls, he quickly changes his tune and becomes a much more noble being. He finds his moral compass and rescues the group from Great Ape Goku. That's a big deal when times were rough. Credit where credit's due here. Of all people to do this in the early days, Yamcha came good. Fortunately though, after that first arc, during the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament, he started to develop more as a genuinely solid fighter. In fact, he was becoming a bit of a badass again as he was going through those initial stages. He even showed a little bit of smarts in being able to figure out that Roshi was Jackie Chun. But sadly, this does not actually go anywhere and gets played for laughs instead of it being an actual plot twist and everyone go like, what? good finding out, Yamcha, and he quickly loses confidence in his idea and the trail is gone. Oh. You see what we mean? Are you beginning to see a pattern here? Yamcha starts off very strong in something, he then gets to the point of sealing the deal, but then a comedic moment, at his expense, comes along and chucks him under the bus for the audience's amusement. Throughout the years, Yamcha has been a genuinely good support for the group, and you might even say that those are the best years of his time in the show, where for the most part, he is a competent fighter when the chips are down. Although there is still the leg incident, but at the end of the day, it's not so bad really. He got his best friend that way, Tenshinhan and he, forming an unlikely bond, where they are polar opposites and they gel well because of it, so friendship from the first limb smash? During the King Piccolo saga, things are looking good for the guy. He has a mostly solid run, and when he returns for the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament, he has his trademark scars that he got from his training. It looks like he's been taking things seriously. Now think about that for a second, folks. Yamcha got his scars through training, not a battle. We've never seen him obtain a scar ever in the entire history of Dragon Ball on screen. He usually acquires them off screen. And usually in media, a character gaining a scar or a lasting wound is something to take note of. You really linger on it to really sell as dramatic and game-changing for that character. For Yamcha, he's just busy collecting them. It's quite interesting, since it's become such a key attribute of his character. Scars in Dragon Ball are often pegged to Yamcha, but despite his new really tough guy look, well, the humiliation continues. And I think this particular instance of degradation started a certain trend for the character, one that he would never be able to shake off ever again. As we mentioned earlier on in this video, Yamcha's whole joke and gimmick was that he was constantly contrasting his badass bandit look with not so heroic tendencies and situations. It seems that Dragon Ball Z decided to take that formula and concentrate it even more. That series has been the most cruel to him, clearly. At times, I feel in an unintended manner, it just happened. Almost as if the script wrote itself. And almost as soon as he started, the Yamcha bullying arc began. It's hard to tell whether or not the whole Yamcha cheated on Bulma shtick was written due to Toriyama being unable to write relationships well, so he just nicks it all together, or whether he planned for Vegeta to end up with Bulma right from his first appearance. It's pretty unlikely though, since Toriyama at the time, he was not a devotee in the art of planning massive character beats further down the line. He just wrote by the seat of his pants, but he has gotten better since then. And it's really hard to find any meaningful quotes from the man himself as to why he wrote infidelity into the bandit story. The only decent comment that we could find comes from an interview with Yamcha's voice actor Toru Furuya, and even he's kinda confused. That was a shock. I often spoke with Hiromi Suru-san, who plays Bulma. Both she and I thought Bulma and Yamcha would end up together. And for Vegeta of all people, it really was a shock. So when I met with Toriyama-sensei, I complained, why did it have to be like this? Then Toriyama-sensei said, come on, Yamcha's a cheater. Laughs. I'm sorry, what? Since when did Yamcha exhibit any sort of inkling that his eyes would wander? Come on! Bulma was the girl that got Yamcha over his fear of girls. She's smart, eccentric, witty, and beautiful. Her being rich is a nice bonus, but that is never something that anyone should ever base a relationship on. Money. Personality comes first. The only notion you could even think of is that once maybe his fear of girls was gone, then Yamcha might have wanted to sample the market, perhaps. Come on, man, though. No way. Haverock and I really feel that Toriyama was bored of writing them as a couple, and so chose to make Yamcha a cheater to spice things up at the beginning of Z. After all, he got bored of writing Chi-Chi, remember? Transforming her from a plucky princess into a nagging housewife. It's not a surf-fetched notion that the same fate got handed to the bandit. It's boredom. So while the initial reveal comes from the filler arcs of the anime, it is later reinforced by future Trunks, when he mentions that this was the reason that Bulma and Yamcha in his timeline broke up. Also, the Kakarot game added a whole can of worms to that debate, but we'll get to that in a moment. On one hand, Yamcha might have had his successful baseball career, but he still wasn't able to find satisfaction from it, that aspect of his life. Part of him still longing to be a fighter and genuinely help save the world from bad guys, give himself some value and credibility. He does get his chance against the Cybermen after having trained with Tenshinhan, Chaozu and Krillin for the year prior, and while a lot of us remember his rather pathetic loss, the initial motivation was actually something heroic, something which is often and conveniently forgotten about. Do you remember how he wound up in that crater? You see, he wanted to fight them in Krillin's place, knowing that his friend had already been revived by the Dragon Balls once, back in the King Piccolo saga. And back in the day, the limits on revivals were still there. You couldn't be brought back a second time, Chaozu being a notable example. Yamcha took the fall for Krillin, to save him from being permanently removed from the Dragon Ball equation. Isn't that a cool and honourable way to go, to save your friend? We don't remember that. What remained from that really big act of friendship? It was that. After that, he really doesn't do much in the saga. He's mostly spending his time being dead on King Kai's planet, not learning the Kaioken. And during those 3 years before the androids showed up, Bulma and Yamcha broke up for good. Yeah. So let's talk about one of the submissions from Kakarot, shall we? The one called One Cool Dude. Basically, the game tries to fill in the gaps as to how Yamcha cheated on Bulma. In that mission, it was revealed that Yamcha had actually been dating 2 girls, so 3-timing? Named Sapphire and Pearl. Luckily for them, they managed to figure out on their own that Yamcha had been cheating on the pair of them, and attacked Yamcha with robots that they had stored in capsules. Yes, robots in capsules. Sapphire and Pearl. Might be a reference to a certain other series which includes things being stored in capsules to then battle people. While he and Gohan manage to destroy the robots, which greatly impresses the girls, Yamcha fails to notice the third one, who manages to catch him unawares and self-destructs, making the bandit end up like that, in a well-known pose. The girls then leave, with Yamcha trying to keep a stiff upper lip toward Puar, saying that it would take more than a self-destruct robot to get rid of him. But still, this really enforces the idea of Yamcha as a cheater, and a rather pathetic one at that. What is he, Brock? In the official Z series, his role gets even further diminished, as in the Android saga, he's mostly being scared by Vegeta, and gets to know Dr. Gero a little too intimately. The most useful thing he does during said arc is bringing the sick Goku away from the battlefield to his home, and then later to Kame House. He's basically a taxi. He does pilot a plane though, which is kinda neat, because pilots are cool. But for the most part, he's just there, not doing anything noteworthy. During the 25th Budokai, he's kind of a good uncle toward Marin, 18 and Krillin's kiddo. He then gets eaten with everyone else by Super Buu, but at least in the anime it is stated that he managed to regain his passion for fighting in the other world, you know, when he took down Olibu and won, which set up the whole fan debate about Yamcha being stronger than Perfect Cell because of it, but that's for another video. Other than that, he gave Goku energy for the Spirit Bomb, and that's it. Super's been a little kinder toward him at times though, as he is allowed to have a rather funny scene with Beerus when, uncharacteristically, the cat god is the butt of the joke this time, and not Yamcha. He also, of course, has the whole baseball episode, which is meant to be a huge celebration for his character, but that kind of just gets thrown out the window, because, yeah, the pose comes back, and then he's omitted from the Tournament of Power altogether several episodes later. Mostly to serve the joke of Yamcha wanting everyone to ask him to help. To Toyotaro's credit though, he is given a rather cool sequence in the manga, when Moro's goons attack Earth, and he is able to take down a few of them pretty easily. But that's it, really. Out of all the characters that didn't appear in Superhero, we felt that Yamcha was the one that we would have liked to have seen the most. We finally want this guy to have some kind of direction in life. No one really expects him to be fighting toe-to-toe with the gods anymore. Nobody really gets to fight them apart from Saiyans. But the whole Yamcha must suffer trope has become really exhausting. It's gotten old. It's something that he became by design. As in any other series, Yamcha would have probably hit all the protagonist checkboxes already. He's handsome, an orphan bandit, tragic backstory, and has an animal companion. But here, no, he just looks like a loser because everyone else has gotten their stuff figured out more or less. Just look at the other humans. There's Krillin, who's a family man. Tenshinhan's got a dojo, albeit not many friends, but he doesn't really seem to care. And as for Yamcha, well, yeah, he's a baseball star, but he's got a mediocre apartment and poir. Yeah, you could easily argue that maybe he doesn't value possessions so much, but he kind of looks a little bit meek. And not only that, the modern media tries to double down on the idea of Yamcha being a cheater, which is really, really weird and undeserving, considering that his original goal in life was to have a family and be a good husband. And for a man that was afraid of girls initially, he sure got over his fears very quickly. Too quickly. It's a weird characterization, and honestly, we feel that such a long-lasting character deserves some kind of closure. You know, something nice. Not necessarily a relationship, just something where he could easily look back at his life and say, yeah, I had a good one. You can probably tell from R&R and Revelation F that we really like Yamcha and we really want him to prosper. But come on, superhero is willing to change the status quo, so maybe whatever comes next will move things up for Yamcha. Fingers crossed for that. Because for now, Yamcha's not even a joke. He's just become a constant punchline. I'll see you in the next video. Catch you later.